Components of blood and their functions. Plasma. Plasma is the liquid matrix that carries blood cells. Plasma is composed of water, ions for osmotic balance, antibodies for immunity, albumin for buffering, fibrinogen for clotting, carrier proteins for lipids, nutrients for all cells, waste to be removed, hormones for endocrine regulation, and gases to be exchanged. If blood is centrifuged in a test tube or allowed to sit, it will separate into its components. Plasma makes up about 55% of total blood volume. Plasma, since it is the least dense material, mostly water, it is going to float on top of the other materials. The erythrocytes, which are red blood cells, are the most dense, so they settle to the bottom of the test tube. And then as a result, you get these three layers. The red blood cells on the bottom, the white buffy coat in between, which are the white blood cells, and the yellowish plasma on top. Blood cells. Red blood cells, also known as erythrocytes or RBCs, transport oxygen and carbon dioxide. There are 5 million to 6 million red blood cells per millimeter cubed. The structure of red blood cells is biconcave discs. Their high surface area to volume ratio enhances gas exchange. Red blood cells lack nuclei and mitochondria. Each erythrocyte has about 250 million molecules of hemoglobin, the iron-containing protein that transports gases. Each molecule of hemoglobin contains 4 molecules of oxygen or carbon dioxide, so each RBC carries 1 billion molecules of oxygen or carbon dioxide. Pictured down here, we have the red blood cells shaped like little tubes or biconcave discs, and a hemoglobin molecule shown on the right here shows each binding site. Each one of these guys contains an iron molecule on each site, and that iron molecule binds to an oxygen, and so the hemoglobin carries 4 oxygen molecules. Blood cells. Gas exchange occurs between capillaries and alveoli. Alveoli are the smallest compartments of the lung airway. Like capillaries, alveoli have thin walls, allowing gases to diffuse from lungs into blood and from blood into lungs. In alveoli, oxygen diffuses through the epithelial lining and onto the hemoglobin of RBCs. The CO2 diffuses from hemoglobin RBCs into alveoli. In capillary beds of tissues, gases diffuse in the opposite direction. Blood cells. Platelets are fragments of large cells known as megakaryocytes. Platelets facilitate blood clotting when vessels are damaged and leak blood. There are 250,000 to 400,000 platelets per millimeter cubed, or per microliter. The diagram on the right shows inactive platelets, which flow through blood vessels. The activated platelets become sticky. These activated platelets will bind to a tear in the blood vessel wall, allowing clotting to happen. Blood clotting. How does clotting take place? Clotting is needed when the endothelium of a vessel, such as an artery or capillary, is damaged, exposing the interior of the vessel to the blood. Platelets adhere to the exposed tissue and release a sticky substance. Platelets form a plug at the wound site. Platelets and damaged cells mix with clotting factors in plasma, which initiates an enzymatic cascade. In this diagram, we see platelets working with fibrinogen to create a fibrin clot. Blood clotting. The enzymatic cascade is a sequence of enzyme reactions that facilitate clotting. In this process, prothrombin, an inactive enzyme, is converted to thrombin, the active form of the enzyme. Thrombin converts fibrinogen, an inactive precursor protein, to fibrin, a thread-like protein that cross-links and forms a mesh at the clot site. The fibrin strengthens the clot site, and blood cells are not able to see past the clot. Blood clotting. Blood coagulation in vivo is shown in this flowchart here. As you can see, it's a very complex process, involves platelets, involves various factors. All these Roman numerals here are all required for the whole enzymatic cascade to happen, but focus here on prothrombin, that's the inactive enzyme, becomes thrombin when activated by all these factors, and then that enzyme will convert the fibrinogen, which is able to flow through the blood, it's dissolved in the plasma, then converts that to fibrin, which is more of a sticky substance, and that is able to cross-link the platelets and form a fibrin clot. Blood cells. White blood cells are involved in immune responses. They fight infections of viruses, harmful bacteria, and parasites. There are 5,000 to 10,000 white blood cells per millimeter cubed total. Types of white blood cells include lymphocytes, which fight specific pathogens in the adaptive immune response, granulocytes, which release granules of active chemicals to help fight infections, and monocytes, which engulf foreign structures and process them. Types of white blood cells. All of the blood cells are shown here. The stem cell, which produces them, is on top. With the exception of the thrombocytes, or the platelets, and erythrocytes, or the red blood cells, all the cells shown are types of white blood cells.